Why is it that the so-called smooth brain Homo sapiens are able to make progress, whereas the stoic, the intellectual, the wizard, and I don't just throw that word around for airy fairiness. If you read the book King, Warrior, Lover, Magician, you understand that the magician is an archetype. And when you are an addicted magician, an addicted lover, you lack a certain virtue, the virtue of a warrior's heart. You're very prone to falling into the trap of trying to solve problems that don't yet exist, trying to gather as much information as possible. But we've forgotten what progress looks like. How does getting to the next step in anything look like? You see, when you are dead set on gathering more information, you haven't developed that warrior's heart yet, the virtue of attacking the day or doing what you said you were going to do. That simple virtue. It's such a simple thing to say, and yet the addicted lover, the addicted magician, the intellectual, the person who's constantly scheming, planning, it becomes such a difficult mountain to overcome. They've made it more of a difficult mountain to overcome. Whereas the caveman, the brute-like guy that doesn't have or need all of this information, just started to throw shit at the wall and saw what would happen. And they gained more information than the magician who is stuck behind the screen, simply because they applied themselves towards a certain direction. Through action, you gain more information than reading an entire book. I can sympathize with that intellectual side of a lot of us guys where we want to figure out what is the clear path. We're in a certain place and we see another guy achieving something. We try to figure out, how do we achieve what he's just achieved? Okay, he did this specific thing, he has this strategy. Let me follow through with that strategy. Let me figure out how he executed on that strategy. But the problem is that is like a fly trap where you get stuck in for so long trying to understand all of the little nuances of where he's at, not realizing that it took him a period of trial and error to get to this not perfect but better achieving place. And you don't get there through the intellectualizing of how to get there. You get there through starting. And when you have the expectation that now that you saw someone do something in a certain way, that you will be able to do that thing in that perfect way, you have started to set up reality against yourself. And it seems obvious if I break it down, let's say, into a simple example. Let's say you see someone do a backflip in front of you. Just because you saw the person do the backflip doesn't mean that automatically you're going to be able to do the backflip. And in the same way, just because you saw someone embody a certain virtue of like charisma, or you saw someone take action and succeed in a certain area, just because you saw it or just because you intellectually understood it, doesn't mean that when you take the action, you will have those same results. And when you make that differentiation between these two different types of reality, you get faced with the cold hard truth that it is going to take getting used to taking action and failing before you can succeed. We have the idea, the concept, we've been raised through school, and that if you gather enough information, that's what will get you through to the next stage. Just read the book, take the test, and graduate to the next level. But in life, you have to be able to take action, physical action. Go take the job, go talk to the girl, start that odd project that no one believes in. It's by taking those actions and then failing that you're able to make the learning curves and the shifts that the intellectual is lacking in. And the only thing that you need as a man or as a woman to take that first step is clarity in where you're going. You need to know what direction you're sailing your boat in. If you put a boat into the middle of the water with no sailor, with no captain, that boat will end up on a random island. But you give that boat a map and it will reach its destination. When you have clarity on where you're supposed to be going, it builds a confidence. And confidence will only come to you through proved evidence. When you can prove to yourself that you have the ability to accomplish the goals. And obviously, the small things lead to the bigger things. Over time, eventually, applying yourself through the action, you build that confidence. And it's very obvious to see that if you're just intellectualizing life, you're trying to gather more and more information, you never build that confidence because you don't take the action. And therefore, you have all of these massive plans that you want to achieve, that you think you can achieve because you have the plan to achieve this massive plan, lots of plans, but you have no confidence because you haven't started to take the action yet. So the person that stops trying to make all of these plans, gets clear on what their goal is, and simply takes the action forward is going to reach their goal much faster than the person that is making all of these detailed, elaborate plans about how to go from A to Z without making any stumbles or any failures. It's that confidence that we need. There were, back in the warlords, how would they introduce themselves? They would introduce, I am Leonidas, king of this land. My father so done enough research to remember his name. But they would have this reputation that they bring forward with them. When you fight me, you don't just fight me, you fight my ancestors. The blood that runs through my veins holds something stronger than just my name. This type of reputation and confidence is what allowed them to win so many battles. A clarity on who they were allowed them to conquer the world. Someone like Alexander the Great conquered so much at such a young age. Imagine being the ruler of a massive portion of the planet. And this is done only because of a clarity, confidence, and reputation that they hold of themselves. Now, obviously, we live in a different day and age, but these principles can still be applied. The principle of action, letting go of being an addicted lover, an addicted magician, trying to intellectualize everything. How weak is it to be so afraid of failing? When you put it into words like that, it changes how you look at a situation. If you're afraid to start the job when you don't have all of the expertise that you're supposed to have, and you look at yourself, a little bit of the sharpness of how weak am I that I cannot just do this thing, right? And so you go do it to keep and withhold a certain reputation of yourself, a certain confidence, and build that. And what is really the worst that can happen from setting the first step forward, from putting yourself out there into the world? Our minds will craft and conjure up these amazing plans if we were to step on somebody's toes, do the wrong thing, whereas in reality, none of those things ever come true. But the thing is you don't ever get to experience that unless you take the action, unless you have the confidence to take the action. It's built through those small steps. You listen to a video online that will motivate you to take that action forward. But we've gotten addicted to saying tomorrow. And now we have this feeling associated with taking action, and we've attached it to, I'll do it tomorrow. This is the plan, and I love this plan. It's going to work so well tomorrow. And the issue is that feeling that should be associated with taking action in the now is now glued to this figment of imagination, a day that never comes because tomorrow is always in the future, right? And so what would happen? Just imagine, let's create a human being out of thin air. What would happen? Or if we were to clone you, what would happen if every time they said they were going to do something, they just did that thing? I'm not saying if you say make $1 million, the person goes and makes the $1 million. I'm saying more specific. 5 hours of deep work. That person's going to now devote the next 5 hours. No distractions, not being clouded by the outside world, and focusing 100%. What would happen if you had that kind of confidence in your own ability to follow your own word? When you say, I'm no longer going to have these kind of thoughts, and if they show up at any point, I'm going to push them out. I'm going to release them, let go of them. I'm not going to resist, because whatever you resist persists. I'm just going to let go of those negative thoughts. How would that person start to look? And you start to conjure up this feeling inside of your body. Imagine if you were to conjure up that feeling every morning, every day before bed, and you start to build this momentum every single day. You build this confidence in yourself and your ability to follow through with your word. How likely would it be that you achieved what you want to set out to achieve? How much would the chances be stacked in your favor? When you look at it from an outside perspective, almost like you're commanding a little person from up above, it seems more obvious. It seems like, yes, it takes a moment to get the engine going, but once it's going, I can double down from there, right? You develop the virtue of patience, being able to go through a couple of weeks trucking through the mud of your mind, clearing out the clutter, letting go of distractions. Because the difference between us and the warlords, the kings back in the days, they didn't have the type of distractions we have today. We have them at our fingertips, and it clouds our minds. These men and women that lived before us, they conquered entire cities, all with the power of their mind, an intention that they set forward and they took action with. And we can't conquer small, simple goals. Of course we can't, because we make it's so much more difficult than it has to be. A small thing like sticking to your word of what time you wake up or going out on an adventure, starting that, those challenges don't need to feel as difficult as they really are. Taking the action on waking up, how hard really is that? It's simply the struggle within your mind because you allow the distractions to live rent free in your mind. If you're able to cut that out, you make your environment a place of success. You surround yourself with the type of people that breed success. The likelihood of you achieving your dreams goes up so dramatically. And you stack that win percentage up over weeks and months. It's impossible not to win. But it just takes the virtue of patience. Patience, not meaning where you sit around and you do nothing, but patience to be able to work for extended periods of time without seeing instant results. You have to reignite that fire in the belly. And when you have that fire, how do you keep it going? And you have the answer to that. The voices that are talking to you. But if you have too many of these negative thoughts, too many distractions, you can't hear those voices. When you cut the distractions out, when you cut out the negative talk, the negative food that you feed to your mind, all of a sudden the path gets clear. You can present yourself to the world with a clarity, with a reputation of knowing that whatever I say, I have the confidence that I can act that out. And now reality begins to favor you because all the cards are stacked in your favor. So let go of this need to intellectualize everything, to figure out the perfect plan, to be scared of failure. Don't let yourself be so scared of such a simple, small, meaningless thing. Failure looks for you, what failure looks like to you, and be okay with it. Be okay to plunge forward regardless of what might happen. Because it's much better to take action and fail than to not take action and sit there in your own regret. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.